Howdy folks, welcome to the video. I'm going to be covering kind of how I created the original Slender game in Unreal Engine 5 within 24 hours. It's a little bit of a challenge I just took up for myself. I know it's a little bit of a deviation from the normal content on this channel, but I hope you guys enjoy it. And the download link is going to be in the description. It's free to play. Would love for you guys to try it out and let me know what you think. So this is what the map of the Slender game looks like. The premise is pretty simple for the game. You essentially spawn here, and then you have to go around the map to different places, of which 8 of 10 will have a page. And you go to these places while running away from Slenderman, collecting the pages, and if you get all 8, you win. Pretty simple premise, but I wanted to kind of make it, and I wanted to stay faithful to the original. So first thing I did was turn on darker nodes and electronic nodes. It's really just visual, but I need it to be able to develop. Next, I slapped on a bunch of head bobbing and post-process effects to kind of give a spooky body cam look to the game. I then created an empty level and added ultra dynamic sky and put it to nighttime. This added a lot of vibes to the game. Cross-referencing the map that we discussed earlier, I started making a landscape with just like a general template of where I wanted to put things on the map. So this is where Quixel and Megscans become the MVPs of the game, but essentially, I was browsing there a ton, trying to get different assets that kind of match while still having a high fidelity look to them. So what I'm trying to do here is set up an automatic way for me to kind of create an exterior wall where the code itself will just put all the walls down, because it's a pretty big area and I didn't want to do that manually. So I made a basic actor that has a spline as well as an instant static mesh. And then what I do is I just get the bounds of the mesh to automatically kind of use some math to calculate the rotation and the starting position of the next mesh, given like a point on the spline. It worked pretty well though. I'm happy with how it turned out. Did you know that 100% of Slender encounters are with people that are not subscribed to my YouTube channel? To stay safe and not get spooked by Slender, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to this video. Another good reason would be if you like seeing game development content and just want to follow my progress. But thank you, and let's continue with the video. After finishing on making the walls to hold the player inside of the map, I wanted to move on to making what I consider probably the most involved asset for this game, which is the bathrooms. It's kind of like a custom building with white tile and brick walls. I didn't really want to look for just like some random asset online, so I decided to just like do a little bit of modeling in Engine itself and kind of make the bathrooms. And this is how it turned out. Right, so the next thing I needed to do is get the pages made. These need to be able to just like kind of be put anywhere and hold kind of like an image. So I wanted to make my own page artwork, but after seeing how this turned out, I decided to just use the original game's. Couldn't quite figure out how to make the material rotate the image, so I decided to just rotate the actual mesh in the actor instead. In order to ensure that the interaction wouldn't take up too much performance, I didn't attach it to a tick. Instead, I just made a timer that runs every like 1/5 of a second and checks to see if you can interact with the page. That's what this looks like, and yeah, after that we had pages ready that could be picked up, and I was going to make the UI for it. So for the user interface, I didn't really want it to be in the way, but I still wanted it to indicate kind of what the player can or can't do. So I wanted to have this like flying kind of grabbing icon that shows up when a page is kind of in sight and ready to be interacted with. In my opinion, that's like one of the biggest things you could do for your game, which is just making like a responsive and well animated UI. It really helps the players kind of get immersed. Yeah, so after that, I wanted to get all of the objectives set up, so I took some time to just scatter the pages around the different places, like the oil tank, the silo, the vehicles, and then I realized I still had to make the tunnel as well as like the cut trees, so I went ahead and did all of that in this next section here, but they look pretty good. The map still looks a little bare, but we're gonna cover all of that when we actually make foliage and just add a little bit more volumetrics and stuff to like add to the overall aesthetic and vibe of the map. So while it's not immediately apparent from just watching me put down a bunch of trees all over the map, There's actually a lot of thinking that has to go into where and what kind of foliage you place, because oftentimes trees have like things like wind parameters that are using world position offsets to kind of just like make for swaying leaves and stuff like that, but that can really negatively impact performance. So I was kind of making sure that I had the right foliage here and then putting them down, and later I didn't record this part, but I had to go in and kind of edit some of the materials to make them a bit more performant, because we're not just putting down a few trees, we're putting down the scale of like hundreds, and in some cases even like thousands for the smaller bushes. But after about like 30 minutes to an hour of just optimizing and getting the tree positions right, I felt pretty happy about how it looked, and these are the results. So next I wanted to kind of cover some of the more immersive audio aspects of the game. So I made a system custom that kind of uses different physical materials to create like realistic footstep sounds. So the three I think I needed for the project were like gravel / dirt, and then grass, and then just like a concrete, mostly just for the bathroom section. There's no other section that uses that. But so I got that set up using physical materials and line casts, which go down from the player's kind of position to the ground to make sure that we're making sound appropriate to what they're stepping on. And then I created kind of a stamina system where when the character has been running for too long and they're out of stamina, they like kind of like sound out of breath. That was really fun to do. I got to put my voice acting chops to the test, and yeah, I think it turned out pretty good. I'll share results here in a second. Considering the most fun part of this game is kind of trying to survive from Slenderman, I'm gonna refrain from showing the actual model as well as things like that, and consider this whole section a spoiler. And so if you guys are gonna be playing the game, I would recommend pausing and leaving and playing it before you come back here, because I'm gonna be explaining in detail kind of how I implemented his AI, and I think understanding it will also just make the game a bit more trivial to play. But yeah, so anyone that's going to play should probably click off now and then come back and see it once you guys have finished playing the game. So I implemented Slender's AI using an EQS query. What that allows for you to do is just plot a bunch of points around a specific location on the map and then run a bunch of tests against them and programmatically determine kind of what your top 10% or top 25% best points are, where you want your AI to go. So I basically created 5 tests, which are run against a 2,500 radius circle from the player to ensure Slenderman is always kind of like trying his best to get into spooky positions and scare the player. The first test is a pretty obvious one, which is that Slenderman will always be required to show up within 1,000 to 2,500 points away from you, and he tries to get as close as possible. So as close to 1,000 as possible, the other tests permitting. The next test is I just made sure that there is a sightline from Slenderman to the player, not the other way around. So Slenderman doesn't always appear in front of the player, but essentially Slenderman will never go to a position where he can't see the player. The third test is just really to add a little bit more of a natural feel for it. It didn't feel very right for Slenderman to just show up in the middle of the woods or like an empty barren patch of grass. So it's required that wherever he goes, he's at least within like 500 points units from some kind of solid object, whether that be a tree or a building. That doesn't really matter, but just some solid object. And the final thing I did was I kind of just made a marker on the player itself, which is projected a little bit out forward from the actual character, and I make Slenderman want to be closer to that point. That's weighted heavily, so it has a 2 times weight, and what that allows to happen is more often than not Slenderman will be where the player is looking. not directly in his line of sight, but essentially forward as opposed to behind the player. Because in order for the AI to trigger, the player has to put Slenderman inside of essentially like his central cone of vision. Alright, so let's get right into it. This is what gameplay looks like. We're obviously not going to be trying to beat the whole game here. That'd take a while, as it does with any Slender game. But yeah, I think it turned out pretty good. The head bob is really nice, and I think the aesthetic is good. The fog really carries a lot of the performance and visuals. So. Yeah, so I think that's a good place to end this gameplay. It looks pretty good. I'm really happy with how it turned out, especially considering I only had 24 hours to make it. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. The link will be down below for you guys to be able to play it free of charge on itch.io. It'd be really appreciated if you guys could check out my main game, Collateral, as well as other videos. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.